alumni to Technovation's first virtual World Summit. My name is Kate Foto, and I'm the program coordinator for Technovation. We're so glad you could join us for this exciting workshop by LinkedIn. I'd like to introduce you to our speakers for today. In her role as nonprofit and K-12 account executive at LinkedIn, Barbie Ramey helps organizations to hire and keep highly skilled talent. Barbie partners with companies to help them tell their stories and reach their target audiences. Barbie has been instrumental in improving organizations' development and fundraising capabilities through the power of their networks. And in his role as nonprofit and K-12 account executive, Matt Almiranti guides nonprofit organizations on how to better leverage LinkedIn's powerful networking platform. Through the process of finding top talent, Matt reduces their time and cost to hire and helps companies to establish their brand's presence on LinkedIn. If you have questions for Barbie and Matt, please type them in the chat pod, as I see some of you are already doing, which is great. And we'll be selecting some questions to read aloud after their presentation is done. Without further ado, I'll turn things over to Barbie.
Kate, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. I'm very happy to be speaking with you all today. So today we'll be covering two parts. First and foremost, building your professional brand and how to get noticed by your future employers, coworkers, bosses, and recruiters. So why LinkedIn? What is LinkedIn? Why should we be on it? LinkedIn is the world's largest professional networking website. 9 out of 10 workforce members globally use LinkedIn. So what that means is you should too. So in 5 easy steps, we'll quickly show you how to build out a LinkedIn profile and then the important parts of the profile to help you get noticed by future employers. First and foremost is your education piece. When putting the education piece on your profile, some things that you should include are the schools that you attended, any coursework that you have completed, so that can include Technovation, any clubs that you were a part of, and any honors, awards, things that you've received throughout your duration of your education. Members that show their education on their LinkedIn profile get 10 times more views than somebody that does not have their education on their profile. We encourage having a photo on LinkedIn. The reason why is if you're going to a meeting, it's always good to put a face to a name. Profiles that have a picture are 21 more likely to get views. In your profile, you should be standing alone. You should be looking professional, and always have a neutral background. You never want anything to be too distracting. I also like to note here, if you are in a situation where maybe you don't feel comfortable having your photo out there, or maybe you just don't want your photo on your profile, that's totally fine as well. As long as you have your education and your experience, those will definitely speak for themselves. Next, your experience. So experience is so important, especially when you're looking to apply for different schools or different programs, or potentially get a new job or your first job. Something that's important to know is it does not matter what your previous experience was, whether that was you were working at a restaurant, working for a family business. All of those things should be listed on your profile. Individuals with experience and all their experiences listed on their profile are 36 times more likely to be found by recruiters. Within your experience, it's also very important to describe what you accomplished. So whether that's using data, so numbers that say, hey, I was able to increase sales by this much, or I was able to help X, Y, and Z amount of customers come through our line. All those things are very important. And as you start to build up your portfolio of your experience, those numbers speak very loudly. Number 4, this is definitely my favorite part, working with nonprofits across the United States, is showcasing your volunteer experience. What this shows is if you're networking with fellow colleagues or potential coworkers, it shows that you could have similar interests, but also to employers, it shows that you're focused on other things than just your career. You're a well-rounded individual. It's also important to know is, let's say you were young getting started in your career, volunteer experience can also be viewed as just regular experience and use that in terms of like an internship opportunity as well. And number 5 is skills. So Within LinkedIn, people search for skills all the time. So this is why it's so important to have your skill set listed on LinkedIn. If you know different sorts of code, if you know different sorts of technology, if you have great communication skills, those are all skills that people want to hire for and other people want to learn from you. So if you list 5 or more skills, you'll actually get up to 17 times more profile views. And again, this is just a fantastic way for you to get noticed by potential colleagues, future employers, or future boss. And now I'd like to pass it over to Matt for the get hired part of it.
Awesome. Thanks, Barbie. So now that you know how to build out your LinkedIn profile, I think this is the most important step, is how to actually use your LinkedIn profile to get into your dream school, to get your dream job, etc. We'll walk through all the different steps that you can take to really differentiate yourself on your LinkedIn profile. As you know, when you apply to a school or you apply to a role, there could be thousands of other applicants. So how can you make yourself stand out utilizing LinkedIn's capability? So the first step here is something we call the alumni tool at LinkedIn. So essentially, if I wanted to go to Technovation's page or my university or my high school's page, I can navigate to that page. And let's say I wanted to work at a company like LinkedIn or Google. I could quickly go to this alumni tab and see who from my organization or who from my high school, my college, my university, etc., now works at LinkedIn or works at Google. So I can see, hey, how did this person get from where I'm starting from today to work at the company I want to work for in the future? The next thing we can do here is just actively reach out to them on LinkedIn, and we'll walk through some examples here in a short bit. But why this is so important is that the number one way to get into an organization is through a referral. 85% of employees get filled through referrals. And I think a great story here is actually my program at LinkedIn. I started in a cohort of 60 individuals through a program called the Business Leadership Program. Of those 60 individuals, 56 were referred. So only 4 individuals got into this program without having an employee referral, intensifying the importance of getting that referral. I would say what a great example to do here for getting into university of your choice is that it's important to remember that there are so few individuals in high school that are on LinkedIn that it's a great resource for you to proactively reach out to professors, to potential individuals making those admissions decisions, et cetera, to almost leverage them as a referral into the university. So a great way to think about that as well. So we have our LinkedIn profile, we have the alumni tool, we maybe only have a few connections right now. How do we connect with people we know? Here's a great example of, let's say, reaching out to a professor you had. It says, hey, Professor Smith, I very much enjoyed your Economics 201 class last year. It's actually economics where I aspire to major in. May I add you to my network? This is a great, quick, simple message to easily add an individual to your LinkedIn network that you've met. I would always recommend adding a personal message to your LinkedIn requests, as it shows that you put some thought into it. You're not just clicking a button, adding as many connections as possible. You genuinely want to build a relationship with them down the line and add them to your professional network. So I believe this is one of the more important slides here. So when we think about getting that dream job or getting into that dream university, et cetera, the best way, again, is utilizing that alumni tool. Now, when we utilize that alumni tool, we don't just want to reach out to them and say, hey, really want to work at Google. Can you refer me? Can you, et cetera, blah, 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 blah. What we actually want to do is reach out very thoughtfully, right? We want to craft the message like the message we're seeing now, and use their profile to find key insights. So let's say you are reaching out to an individual who is also a part of Technovation, or an individual who went to the same university as you. Maybe that individual played the same sport, or they were in the same organization, et cetera. Leverage those connections and those, insights into your LinkedIn message so that you're putting as much thought as possible into the message. Everyone loves to be or receive a thoughtful message. No one loves to receive almost a spam message where it's just a generic copy and paste. A great example would be today. Let's say you would like to connect with Barbie and I on LinkedIn. I would recommend putting one thing that you enjoy from today's conversation, or one thing that you wish you could learn a little bit more about, et cetera, into that message, just to show that you had some thoughtfulness behind it, not just, hey, would love to add you to my LinkedIn network, et cetera. So what to say, who you are, how you came to their profile, how can they help you, but also how can you help them? You might not think that you have a lot to offer to someone, but it can be as simple as just sharing an article or letting them know some new information about Technovation or the university, et cetera. Could be a variety of different ways to add some value. So we now reached out to the individual on LinkedIn. Let's say we have an interview now at Google because we got referred, or at LinkedIn because we got referred. How do we use LinkedIn to prepare for that interview? And I think it's three key steps here. Number one is following the company on LinkedIn. You would be surprised how many organizations throw out candidates for not following their company on LinkedIn. It shows that you're not necessarily serious about the organization unless you're following them. A great way to prepare for interviews as well is that companies will post updates on their quarterly earnings call, which is essentially how they're performing to date against the market and how much revenue they're bringing in, et cetera. They'll post articles about new products, new innovations, et cetera. It's really great for you to stay on top of all these new findings so you can leverage them in your interviews. You can talk about them in your interviews. Maybe the beginning conversation, mention how excited you are about Microsoft's new Xbox or Microsoft's new, et cetera. Show that you're staying prepared and you're in the know of the industry. The second would be following influencers. You can gain a lot of insights from great company industry leaders, et cetera. Let's say you wanted to work again at Microsoft. You could follow Satya Nadella, who's our thought leader and CEO, who has some great content on LinkedIn. And you can actually start to use his verbiage that he uses in your interview. Great example. If you worked at Amazon, you could follow Jeff Bezos on LinkedIn and start to pick up on Amazon's leadership principles. Amazon has, I think, at least 9 or 10 different leadership principles. You can actually start using those exact words in your interview, and that recruiters will absolutely love because it shows that you are molding your verbiage to the organization and you're already bought in on what they're trying to accomplish. Third, we'll be following industries. I think this is a great way to stay on top of the technology industry or the marketing industry or et cetera in a very, very great space. Example of that would be when I was interviewing at LinkedIn. We are owned by Microsoft. I noticed that around 20,000 Microsoft sales employees had been laid off, I think, a couple of days before my interview. When it came to the questions portion of my interview, I laid a very thoughtful question. Said, hey, noticed that 20,000 sales individuals from Microsoft were laid off. Know that LinkedIn is part of Microsoft. How would that eventually affect my role moving forward? The interviewer didn't even know that had happened at his own company and was incredibly impressed that I brought those insights. And I put that level of preparation and care into my questions rather than just asking, hey, how's the food? How's the culture? Et cetera. Asking thoughtful questions based on insights are very, very important. And again, great ways to differentiate yourself from the competition. So taking it from building your LinkedIn profile to finding the right individuals to connect with on LinkedIn to preparing for that dream interview and or dream application process for the university that you would love to go to, et cetera. It's closer than you think. You can do all these things through LinkedIn, and you can really differentiate yourself on the platform to make you that much better of a candidate moving forward. I know we talked through a lot, so I believe I will pass it back to Kate to walk through any questions you all might have for us.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Matt and Barbie. I feel like I've learned so much, and I really appreciate you sharing this with us today. So I am going to look through our chat pod, and I do see at least one question in here from Medina Urazova, and she would like to know how to describe your projects properly in LinkedIn. And Medina, feel free to clarify in the chat pod, but I think, especially since a lot of our students and our alumni have created coding projects or STEM-related projects, how would you do that in your profile?
So first and foremost, I would say it doesn't have to be anything fancy. I think the biggest thing when people are getting started on LinkedIn is because it is a professional network. They take a very long time to get things published on there. But there's a few ways to go about it. First and foremost, I would put your work in a post, and then that can generate some engagement from there. The second part is I definitely put it on your profile. Within your profile, put it as like maybe an experience would be good. And then from your experience, you can list like high level takeaways from it. And then below it, bullet point some numbers or some metrics that you use to get there. And then additionally, on your profile, you can attach a file. So that way, if people are visiting your profile, they can now see the work that you've done, whether that's an external website link, whether that's just like a PowerPoint PDF, all that can actually be put within your experience. Yeah, hopefully that's helpful and answers the question. But again, just think about it in two parts. First and foremost, make a post, get some engagement around it, have all your friends, family, colleagues like it, comment on it, and then from there, make sure that it's within your profile so people can see that throughout.
That's great to know. And that's really interesting about how you're doing a post. So it's like call to attention as like because I'm imagining the posts are more timely or time sensitive, and then also keeping it in your profile, what I think of sort of the resume of the website. So I am seeing a chat question come in. How important is it to post on LinkedIn, and what kind of content should I be putting out? And if I can just sort of, and that's from Ananya Grover, and just to also add to that, when do you post things separately versus put it in your experience only? If we could sort of talk to that.
I can speak to the first part, and just my personal opinion on posting on LinkedIn. I'm a firm believer in that authenticity sells, and that being your true authentic self will only do you better moving forward. So if you are the type of person who absolutely loves to share content, who loves to post, maybe on other social media platforms, and you have some professional things that you'd like to share or accomplishments you'd like to share, absolutely, I think it's very appropriate to post on LinkedIn, share those news updates, etc. If you're someone who, like myself, is just not necessarily very into posting on LinkedIn or social media in general, that's totally okay too. If that's who you are authentically, there's nothing wrong with that. And at the end of the day, it's really important to remember that authenticity sells, and that as long as you're being your authentic self, people will find you genuine, and it won't matter if you're posting on LinkedIn or not posting on LinkedIn, if that helps. I know Barbie has some to add on there.
Yeah, a couple different things. I think the first lens to look at it through is, what do I want my future colleagues or employees to know about me or think of me? Because essentially this is your professional brand. So think about that as you're posting, but again, absolutely be authentic to yourself. And second part of it is, if you're looking for engagement in terms of like likes or getting like a broader reach, there's two things that I've seen really successful on our platform. Pictures tend to get more engagement. So let's just say you just completed a project. Taking a picture of the group that you worked on the project with and just said, hey, this is a project we completed. We're so proud of the work that we did. You can check out more information here, or take a look at our profile to see everything we accomplished. And then the second part that gets the most engagement is when you're asking a question to the larger network. You'll be surprised at how many people will chime in completely out of your network or that you've never heard of or across the globe, looking to provide advice, especially when you're younger, coming out of high school, coming into college, that transition stage, asking any advice of, hey, I'm looking to get into a tech company. How do I do that with the background that I have? You'll be surprised at how willing people are to help.
Thank you. That's such a great point. And it kind of adds to that question of, is being younger a disadvantage on a platform because you may not have as much formal experience, but it sounds like you're saying that people might be more willing to help you out. That's great. I see another question in our chat pod. Have you noticed any trends in success in the US versus in other, the different global markets? And would you have different recommendations for job seekers, say in Kenya, for example, versus the US?
Yeah, so that is a great question. Today, I don't have any specific data on different activities on the platform, depending on geographical location worldwide. I will say it is encouraging to know RTO actually came out. Even though LinkedIn is a US-based company, most of our traffic is not coming from the US. Our traffic's coming from Africa, from Europe, from Asia, even more so than the US. So if it's a little bit of an encouragement, I would say continue to do what Matt had spoken about, making those connections and sending thoughtful messages to people will definitely help. And then if it, again, adds any encouragement, the US actually is not having the most engagement on the platform. It's coming from other parts of the world. as well.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, that is encouraging to hear. All right, so I'm seeing, I think we have, so, I know we talked a little bit about, what to include in the formal work experience, the school, the education experience, and volunteer experience. That personal summary at the top of the profile, are there any suggestions in terms of how to showcase yourself? I do like, Barbie, how you put that lens on it, saying keep in mind what you'd want your future potential coworkers or professors to know about you, to sort of like how to craft your stories, I guess what I'm trying to get at.
When it comes to building out your LinkedIn summary, absolutely, it's really what you're comfortable with and really what is authentic to you. For example, for me, I talk about my current work at LinkedIn. Beforehand, when I was in university, I essentially spoke to what I was passionate about, what some of my skills were, then also decided to put some information on my interests. So personally, if you're familiar with the TV show Game of Thrones, I love the TV show Game of Thrones. I love reading, and I love pizza. And so I put all three of those things in my profile. And the reason I put that is that authentically, I'm a little bit more of a goofy individual. And I would want my future employee to know that I'm not necessarily going to be 100% buttoned up per se on my LinkedIn profile at all times. Again, that's just coming from your authentic self. If you're someone who likes to put those types of things on their profile, you can absolutely do that. If you're someone who would rather be 100% professional on your LinkedIn profile, that is absolutely totally okay too. Both ways work. It's just being authentic to yourself and what you want on your LinkedIn profile. Add a little bit more personality or keep it more professional. It's totally up to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Anything else that you'd suggest on the first time somebody logs into LinkedIn? Maybe connect with all your friends or?
That's a great question. For me, I would absolutely follow a lot of companies that you care about. And then let's just say you're interested in the medical device industry. That's a really good opportunity to search through LinkedIn and potentially find companies that you've never heard of and then give them a follow. But Kate, to reiterate what you said, it's so important to follow or to connect with friends, coworkers, things like that, because the quicker you can build the network, the more you'll start to feel the power of LinkedIn. If you build a profile and don't necessarily make a ton of connections, you're not going to get the engagement or the benefit out of LinkedIn. So I would definitely connect with as many people as possible thoughtfully. And on top of that, learn about the industries that you care about, and then start to search for companies to follow and thought leaders that work at those companies and start giving them a follow on LinkedIn as well.
Are there any concerns around contacting people you don't know at all? And the reason I'm asking this is because what if I'm interested in an industry where I really don't know anybody? I'm trying to get my foot in. And I'm asking this also partly because how much does it matter if you can vouch for that connection's reputation, if that makes sense? So like if I'm brand new in an industry, I really don't know if the other person is a solid worker or whatnot.
The truth of the matter is you're not going to know until you have a phone conversation with them, right? I would say when you are connecting with people, try to find something that's in common with you all. So whether that be you both are Chicago Bears fans, or whether that be you both graduated from Technovation, or you both grew up in this certain city, find something that connects you both at some point. And I think that builds up the authentic relationship a little bit more. And that way, again, being thoughtful, they're more willing to help you. And you aren't necessarily complete strangers, right? If you have something to talk about. So it's not that awkward conversation. But in terms of their experience and, understanding, like, is this person a legitimate contact that I want to have? Look on their profile, right? Like, do they have a standout profile? Are people writing reviews on their profile saying that they're a great person that has worked at this company? And then also look at their experience, right? Are they bragging about like some of the things that they accomplished? Because then you can say, okay, this person has hard data on the fact that they have performed really well. This is somebody that I want on my team, essentially. Further than that, it's hard to essentially know before you get to know somebody, like how legit they are. But by using LinkedIn and by using similarities that you all might have in common, I think you can mitigate some of the concerns around that.
Yeah, I think it's important to note as well, not every person's going to get back to you. You can send the most thoughtful message ever and they don't respond. That's totally okay. It's almost like playing basketball. You're not going to make all the shots you take, but the more shots you put up, the more shots you will eventually make. So if I shoot 100 shots and I make 40, 40 is better than putting up 10 and making 3. So the more shots you take, the better that percentage is going to be, the better hit rate you're going to have per se. And an important thing to remember is people love helping individuals with similar backgrounds or coming from similar areas. Alumni love helping alumni. I would assume individuals who graduate from Technovation would absolutely love to help those individuals who are graduating from Technovation. And honestly, everyone loves high school and university students on the platform. People love to help those types of individuals. So don't be afraid to reach out for help. Don't be afraid to send those thoughtful messages.
That's really great to hear. And I really like that as an action step for anybody who's on the call today who either has a LinkedIn profile already or doesn't have one and wants to get started, to go through what Barbie and Matt have suggested as the building out your profile, the basic information, and then, practice sending that meaningful message to somebody who you're either looking to get connected to, who you may already know in real life, or someone like a past teacher or past, coworker if you're in the workforce. I think that's great practice. And also I like something, Barbie, you mentioned before about when you're verifying, somebody else's reputation, to remember for ourselves, like I know not all of us have very long work histories. So all of our alumni have done such excellent work in their projects building apps. So I think it sounds like you're saying, like, if they can write out maybe a few bullets about some of the projects they've done on their profile, that helps others to know what you're about. So if you're a really great coder or you're really great at writing business plans, it just helps create your story, create a picture of who you are and what you're about, and helps you to build your network out. I think that's really cool. All right. I know we're getting towards the end of our hour, so I would encourage if anybody has any burning questions in the audience to please remember to enter them in the chat pod before our time is up. But our next question is, interesting. I've seen other people write and share articles on LinkedIn. Is this something that you'd recommend for someone just starting their career to build their visibility in the field they're pursuing?
So when you're posting on LinkedIn, that essentially going out into the newsfeed, there's 2 forms. So you can post like a status update. That's typically for like shorter like questions, or hey, I just completed this course, or me and my friends and coworkers, this is a picture of us graduating, whatever that might be. That's more like the short form, like status updates. I absolutely encourage that regardless of what stage you're in your career, because again, the more visibility you get, the more connections you're going to make, and the more authentically these connections are going to flow in. The second piece is we actually have long form articles that you can write. And I think that's what you were alluding to. Those articles, I personally have never written one. And I think it's just, I haven't, sat down and been passionate enough about a subject that like I wanted to get that out there. But for that, I don't think it matters, where you're at in your career. It could be talking about, I just graduated this program and this is why other individuals should go through this program. Or it can be asking for help or like showing a frustration that you might be having being young in your career. So I don't think age or experience should be a determinant. I think it should be, are you passionate about the subject? Is it something that like you're going to actually sit down and take the time to write and share that? Because essentially that's going to be out there for the long term. And anytime somebody sees your profile, it's going to be, again, attached to your profile.
Wonderful. Just one last thing I wanted to ask, unless there are no further questions in the chat pod, I think you touched upon earlier recommendations from others, whether mentors or coworkers. And then also I know that there were skill recommendations in the past. How important is that? Should you, do you just start crafting those important messages to people you've worked with to ask for that, or how does that work?
Yeah, I guess I can jump in here. I think one thing everyone can do off the bat is go ahead and upvote/like everyone else's skills to give their skills some extra juice. I think there's around 50 people today. If everyone went around and liked each other's skills on LinkedIn, you'd have 50 endorsements. When it comes to recommendations specifically, always great to get a recommendation from a coworker, et cetera. My personal philosophy when it comes to getting a recommendation from a professor or a manager is find out how to make their life easier. And what I mean by that is if you can find a way to really help your boss or really help your manager or really help your professor, they're going to be so much more likely to write you a phenomenal, thoughtful, real LinkedIn recommendation. So once you find a way to make them more successful, help them out in their roles, I'm sure you can go ahead and ask them for a recommendation. They'd be more than happy to craft that recommendation for you.
Well, I do see we are at time, and I just wanted to say thank you so much to our presenters today, Barbie and Matt. I really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us. Thank you all so much. Bye-bye.